During the Monte Carlo Grand Prix in 1988, Ayrton Senna gives us one of the best insights ever into flow state.
That day, I suddenly realized that I was no longer driving it conscious, and I was in a different dimension for me. The circuit for me was a tunnel, which I was just going, and I realized I was well beyond my conscious understanding.
A state of pure engagement. Now, something similar can be seen when skateboarders attempt a trick that is a bit more dangerous than normal.
I've never blacked out during a trick, but that was the first time ever in my life. Like, I can't tell you what was going through my mind in the air. I can only tell you that I rolled up, took 7 pushes, and then saw my daughter off in the distance. And then the next thing I knew, I popped my board, tray flipped, caught it, and was standing up from it. And was like, I did it. I did it. I did it this time.
They can't consciously recall it, yet it happened perfectly. Both of these, as I see it, show the most extreme version of flow state one can be in. So intense that the mind cannot even recall what happened, but it knows it did. And it knows it did without being fully aware of time and space. A state I have no doubt you've experienced, especially if you've been going downhill, on a bicycle, and going a bit faster than what you were comfortable with. At some point, the threshold of safety was crossed and you were simply going. Now, as you pick up speed and keep going more and more toward destruction, it is almost as if you were seeing the future 1 second ahead and then matching it as you go along. A state which is hard to describe in any other way than flow. One which we all, to a certain extent, are after. The big problem we face, though, is that the pursuits we want such state for usually are not facilitators of it. When your bike's going so fast that the chain is almost breaking, it is easy to enter it. After all, it's not like you have a choice. Yet, when you're sitting in front of your computer, I would argue it is the opposite. There are email notifications going off, your phone is staring at you, overwhelm is building up inside, and no danger is there to kick you up into high awareness. We are essentially in the worst possible spot. Yet, as I see it, there's more to it than meets the eye. And if we are to unlock such a state, for how corny that may sound, we have to better understand the initial situation. Now, one would be very tempted to say that danger is the reason that pushes us to this flow state. But I think it goes a bit beyond that. And it is what then just forces us into that, then forces us into flow state. Because if it was just about danger, our body naturally would force us to stop, because we really are essentially trying to survive and not to kill ourselves for the most part. In fact, going way too fast on my bike downhill, feeling like the chain's about to break and God knows what's going to happen, the natural reaction is to brake. A lot of times we have to get over this fear to get going, but once we get going, like we said, we are in flow. And the reason for that is that in a lot of ways, it forces us these moments to let go of control. You know, it's when you're going that fast, there's only so much control you have. You can steer the bike, but you can't control what happens, with the wheels, with the road under the wheels. There's a lot of factors that you don't control, and you are forced, almost like surfing, to go through the situation following a rhythm that's been imposed on you. It is the same when you look at the skateboarding guys or the race car guys, where there's a loss of control that forces you into this state. And usually the barrier for that is fear. So if you do overcome the fear, you kind of let go of it all, and now you're flowing. Now, one is very tempted because intellectual pursuits are not dangerous and it's impossible to cause the same feeling of fear and whatnot into them. It forces us almost, or it leads us to try and put our control over it and to force this flow state through an intellectualization of the process. So we create morning routines and very complex plans and try to map out every step of the day to make sure that when the time comes to work or write or whatever it may be, I'm going to be there and be in flow state. But I ask you, how often does it work? How often all this control leads you to flow state? I would say probably never. But if I ask you, have you had a session working where perhaps you're in a different country, just with your laptop in a random coffee shop that you just began without kind of no plan, and then all of a sudden you're in flow state? You probably have those moments where after you're like, how did that happen? And you almost want to try to recreate the steps to have it again, but then you can't really. And because you can't really, because we miss here the fundamental part of the process. And that is that it's not more control that will lead us to achieve it, but it's less control. It's ourselves to allow to let go of control. Now, I know a lot of you hear this and you probably are rolling your eyes thinking that the advice I have here is to just let go. Let go with the flow, with the motions, chill out, bro, just go with it. That's not what I'm about to do here. Instead, what I want to do is ask you a question and to put yourself in this situation. Think of any hobby, sport you like to do, thing that you like to do that's somewhat physical or kind of forces you to be there that you're very good at least above average. And now I ask you, when you're doing these things, you're not thinking, right? When you're good, if you're playing football, you're just going through the motions. But now I ask you, if you can imagine the situation, while you're doing it, try to think about everything that you are about to do. If you're playing football, you think, okay, the ball is coming at me, I'm going to receive it with my chest, and then from there go ahead, pass to the other player. Try to really intellectualize every part of the process. And even better, try to plan before the game begins what you're going to do. Sounds ridiculous, right? It sounds like you can't plan for these things, but if you try and you do that, what you're going to realize, what's going to happen is that you're going to be so much worse. The more you think, the more like a beginner you are going to seem. And this shows, just to prove my point here, that it is not about trying to put more control that will give you better results. Because when you're playing football or drawing or whatever it may be, it is not a process of intellectualization and then doing. It is a process of doing, of rhythms that you've learned. And the reason this happens, and this is what I'm trying to get at here, is that the more you are trying to exert this intellectual control over things, especially things that you genuinely know how to do, the worse it becomes. Because in your attempt to take control of them, you lose your ability to really put your best potential and best effort forth. If we look at, especially intellectual pursuits, we are always thinking. We never consider that we can do them without just being thinking in the moment. You can write without just going over everything all the time. You can be working on your Excel or whatever without that thought of doing what you're doing. And I know it's harder in intellectual pursuits because you may tell me, how do I write without thinking? And I ask you, how do you take a glass of water and drink it without thinking? How do you kick a ball without thinking? How do you read without thinking? Think about that. How do you read the words that are in front of you without thinking about them consciously? You're just going over them, but you're not. You know how ridiculous it may be. I hope I'm getting my point across. There's no gap possible for you to go between reading to introduce thought. You may think about things that you just read and kind of go into your mind and forget about what you're doing, but you can't be reading, paying attention as you are thinking about the act of reading. And this is what my point is here. It's not just about letting go of control and just doing what your worst emotions want you to do, but it is, you use the mind, you plan, you do these things before, but when the time comes to just do, you do it as you drink a glass of water or kick a ball or read the words in a page. And how do you do those things? If I ask you, describe to me what is the doing of that. And you can't. You can describe what is happening, but you can't describe the connection, brain muscle, my arm is moving now, or I'm speaking. You cannot describe that because it goes beyond the mind. And this is what we have to do, because I believe if we are to attempt and begin doing these things, intellectual or not, and we just do them consciously, not rushing, feeling the flow of them, being patient, but doing them and not going outside of them, what we realize is that soon enough the mind lets go. Almost like we realize that when you're swinging on a swing, by holding the chains tighter doesn't make you in more control. You're just, in a lot of ways, in worse control because you can feel the motion and the movement and relax through it. The more tense you become, the harder it is to maintain balance. The harder it is to maintain balance, the more likely it is that you'll fall. And when you fall, it is much easier to get back up than it is to just keep going with the flow. And so, especially for those of you, if you're like me as well, that you tend to overthink things a lot and to just be in your mind a lot, because the mind, again, the whole day we're using it and thinking, and it is very useful. But let's attempt this, the opposite of it. Plan what you have to plan. And when the time comes to sit down and do, sit down, do without being able to stop or go back to what you've already did. And what you'll find is that once the mind lets go of control and once you are just doing it, you realize that you can not only do it without thinking about it, but you can do much better. But it is scary because it requires us to let go of control. And letting go of control sometimes can feel like dying because our whole lives we've been surviving, holding on and controlling things and putting them here. And it is fundamentally, especially if you're an ambitious person, that kind of not forces your will, but sees your will done among things because of your effort. You will feel very counterproductive. But try this: put control before and after the doing. But when you're doing, allow yourself to let go. And what you'll find is that just as you can easily grab a glass of water and drink, or read the words on a page, or kick a football, you can also do the intellectual tasks without thinking about them. And what you'll find is that how much potential you were keeping away from yourself by trying to force it out.